Watch, he's asking for more than that. And I appeal to you for my son Onesimus, who became my son while in prison. Formerly he was useless, but now he's become useful. His name was Onesimus, which means useful or beneficial. I'm sending him who is my very heart. He said, oh, I love this guy. I hate to have to send him back. I would rather keep him. I wanted to keep him with me so that he could take your place. I know you would want to help me in prison, but you can't because you have business things. You have to take care of your life. But in your heart, you would love to help me in prison. And I wanted to keep him for that. I really love this guy. I would like to keep him. See this fine print, what he's saying here? But I did not want to do anything without your consent, without, at your favor, your blessing, nothing forced. Perhaps he was separated from you for you could have him back and he'd be a good slave, good brother of the Lord. But watch what happens now. He says, and then he says in verse 19, I, Paul, am writing this from my own hand. I will repay it. Not to mention that you owe me a very light now. Verse 20, grant me this benefit in the Lord. Refresh my heart, he cries. You've been refreshing the heart of all the Christians back at Colossae in the church there. Refresh my heart. Watch what he's asking. Grant me this benefit. You know the Greek word for benefit? Onesimus. Onesimus and benefit are the same root word. He's saying, grant me Onesimus. But you can interpret, just grant me this benefit of accepting him back and treating him like a brother. Or you can see the fine print. Actually, give me Onesimus. Let him come and minister to me. Now, watch what he says in verse 21. I write to you with the confidence that you will do even more than I ask. All I'm asking is that you accept him back and treat him like a good brother in the Lord and go to church with him. That's all I'm asking. But I am writing with the confidence you will do more than I ask. Ephesians chapter, whatever it is there, chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who is able to do so much more, exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think. God can do exceedingly abundantly above what we ask or think. Apostle Paul believes it. That's why he writes this stuff. And he lived it and saw it. He is literally asking in the fine print, Philemon, will you give me your slave Onesimus to be my slave, my helper in the gospel, in the ministry? Okay. The Apostle Paul, the great Apostle Paul, I believe we see in this letter how he became even greater. How he became the greatest missionary of all time. Because he had this awesome authority, this awesome power, but he appreciated people. And he appreciated their contribution. And he appreciated their power and influence. And he wanted partnership. He wanted teamwork. If you consider me a team player, we're on the same team. If we're team players here, will you do this? And he's basically, in fine print, saying, will you go all the way and give me your slave? Watch. Who became the pastor of Ephesus? The Apostle Paul was the founding pastor. In Acts chapter 19, we see it there. In chapter 18, Paul went to Ephesus and planted Aquila and Priscilla there to begin groundwork and to begin to explore possibilities. And then Paul came and they started the church. Timothy became the pastor at Ephesus. And when he writes to Timothy, he says, fan the flames, stir up the gift of God. You're an evangelist, you've got the gift of evangelism, do it. Who became the pastor down the road after Timothy? Well, nobody would know. I mean, 99 and 9 tenths of seminary graduates wouldn't know. Let me read to you from a bishop from Ignatius. Ignatius is one of the church fathers about the turn of the century after Christ, and here, in a book written by Lance Webb, the book is entitled Onesimus, that's the title of the book, Onesimus. Lance Webb is the writer, and he quotes Ignatius, the church father. He's quoting what Ignatius is reading, and it's Ignatius's personal diary. And Ignatius said here, I received the welcome of your congregation. This is a letter in his personal diary, notes about his visit to Ephesus. When Ignatius is being taken to Rome to be martyred, It's not a pleasant trip. He knows he's going to die. He's going to Rome to be fed to the lions. And on the way, he asks permission to give greetings to the church at Ephesus, because this is the great mother church of all these satellite churches all over the place in Asia. So he stops. He says, I received the welcome of your congregation in the presence of Onesimus, your bishop in this world, a man whose love is beyond words. My prayer is that you should love him in the spirit of Jesus Christ and all be like him. Blessed is he who let you have such a bishop. Imagine! Onesimus, the runaway slave, the good-for-nothing bum, who should be killed, who should be scrubbed out, becomes the bishop of this mother church of all Asia. Can you imagine that? God can. God instrumented it. God designed it. God says, I know the plans I have for you to prosper you and give you a future and a hope, even when it looks terrible and hopeless. But each person had a part to play in God's plans. Here's a verse for you. It's in Philippians chapter 2. In verse 12, I think he says, work out your salvation. You know, you've got salvation. Work it out. And in verse 13, he says, God is always at work in you to make you both willing and able to fulfill his purposes. I have dyslexia, and I had a terrible time going through school, couldn't read, I reversed letters, I reversed words. It's all jabbery to me. And so when God called me at the age of 15, I accepted Christ. At the age of 16, I was baptized, and God began to call me to be a pastor. And I said, you're making a mistake, God. My brother's read the Bible cover to cover. He can tell stories. He's a great entertainer. Call him. And he said, no, I'm calling you. I said, I can't read. I can't speak. The only time I was ever asked to speak in school, I got up, I looked at everybody, I sat down, didn't say a word. It's terrifying to get up in front of people to preach, or to say a word, or to speak, and they can't read. And so I try to memorize and do stuff because, well, I went away to college, and I thought, to university, I said, I better learn how to read and write if I want to be a pastor. And so I majored in English. And I'm doing English 101. Dr. Shaw, this is a state school, not a Christian school. Dr. Shaw calls me into his office about halfway through the first little term, and he says, Mr. Ewing, he says, I'm going to give you a pink slip in English 101. You're going to fail English 101. And he said, I looked up and it says you're going to be an English major. That's your major. He says, explain this to me.